Hello everyone, I'm Chris with CB Model Works and welcome to my garage. Today's video build part 1 of the Tamiya Skyline GT-R. We're going to be working on the body work today. So I chose this car as my very first video build because low parts count, good fitting parts. I thought keep it simple, right? Nope, I went and messed up the paint and had to redo it, which you'll see in a little bit. So let's get started. So we're going to jump right in on the body work today. First thing up is getting rid of the mold lines. We're using 240 and 320 grit sanding sticks. They're hidden in the body lines pretty well, but if you run your finger across you can feel a sharp edge, and that would definitely show through once we get some paint on it. Next up, we're going to attach any parts that need to get painted with the body using some Tamiya Extra Thin, starting with the side skirts, and then we'll move on to the bumpers. Using very light pressure to hold the parts in place so we don't get any glue coming out of the seams. Just a small amount of Extra Thin, and then we repeat the same thing for the other side. Onto the front bumper, doing a little test fit first to make sure everything lines up. And then same as with the side skirts, just a small amount of Tamiya Extra Thin and very light pressure holding it in place. Same process for the rear. And then we key the body with 3000 grit sanding sponges to get it ready for primer. And here's first time video build mistake number 1. This is our third coat of primer because I forgot to hit record and missed the first 2 coats. We're spraying with Tamiya light gray fine surface primer, decanted and thinned about 20% with Mr. Hobby leveling thinner. No issues with this primer. Went down nice and smooth, didn't have any runs, no dust in it, luckily, since I spray in the garage. And here's coat number 3 on the body. And mistake number 2 is I've got it out of the camera shot. Unfortunately, this is going to happen a few times in this video. Now I'm just looking around the model and making sure I didn't miss anything. Alright, here we are the next day getting ready to spray the black. We're using Model Master Gloss Black Acrylic. It's thin with Mr. Hobby leveling thinner. And we're going to start with all those easy to forget places. From my limited experience with this paint, I've found that it likes to go on pretty wet. However, this isn't spraying the way that it should. I'm noticing it's almost spraying like it's not thinned at all. And it's thinned about 60%. So right about here I'm thinking something's really going bad with this paint. And I can't quite figure out what it is. So I decided to try and thin it some more. Maybe bring the ratio up to about 75% thinner to 25% paint. Trying it out on the smaller parts first, it seems to be spraying okay on the small parts. It seems to be covering well and going down nice and smooth on the spoiler. The paint seemed to go down fine on the small parts. And here we are. Yep, I forgot to hit record again, so we're back to coat number 3 on the body. And this stuff just is not leveling, and it does not look good at all. So after talking to some people on the ISM Friday night show, I found out this was all my fault. Turns out Model Master acrylic paint is water-based, not solvent-based, and does not mix with the lacquer thinner. And that was my issue. So this one came out looking very bad and completely unusable. I let it dry for a couple days, and then spent about 3 hours sanding it back nice and smooth. I didn't strip it all the way down because I was running low on black paint, and I really wanted to keep moving forward with this build. So what I'm trying to do with this is just get a nice thin top layer on so that everything is the same shade of black. This time around, paint spraying much better, going down nice and smooth. No issues at all with this one. And there it is, nice, smooth, semi-gloss black finish. And now we're about 24 hours later. I'm putting down the decals, using microset and microsaw decal solutions where needed. Started with the GT-R badges on the front and the rear. Didn't run into any issues with these decals. They all laid down nicely. And now we got the Nissan badge. Forgot to use the microset on this one, so it took a little persuading to get into place, but eventually it got there. Front emblem had a little bit of the clear paper hanging off the edge, so I hit it with some microsaw, let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then started gently folding it over with the brush. After letting the decals sit for a couple days, it's time for some clear coat. Using Tesser's Wet Look Clear Spray Can, decanted and thinned about 20% with Mr. Hobby Leveling Thinner. This paint likes to go down wet, so to prevent any runs, we're going to start with a light mist coat and let it sit for about 5 minutes and get good and tacky. Not worried about making the model shine here. Just want to get nice even coverage so that the wet coats have something to stick to. After about 5 or 6 minutes, the mist coat is nice and sticky. We're getting started with wet coat number 1. Didn't have any issues with these next couple of coats, so I'm gonna play some music while I paint. So the clear coat came out good, but I got a lot of dust spots in it. One of the joys of painting in the garage. I wet sanded it down with 8,000 and 12,000 sanding sponges. Unfortunately, I had the car out of the camera view. Here I've moved on to polishing, using fine polishing compound by Tamiya. I got most of the dust out, but there's a little bit left. I'm okay with a few dust spots in the paint. It's not worth the risk to burn through the clear coat to get the last few spots out. And now we're on to the finished compound to get out those last little bit of micro scratches and get the shine back up. Normally the polishing would be towards the end of the build, but there was a lot of dust in this one and I needed to know if I was going to have to redo the clear coat. In the end we ended up with just a few spots of dust and a little bit of orange peel, but I'm very happy with how this one came out. You can see the few spots on the hood, but I got a nice shine out of it. Since the body's all done, I figured I might as well go ahead and do the lights. Used just a drop of Tamiya clear orange for the turn signals and then filled in the rest with clear red. Here I'm using a black Sharpie to simulate the seals that would be around the headlight lenses on a real car. Next up, we're gluing the taillights to their backing using some Mod Podge white glue, which will dry nice and clear and won't fog up the clear parts. If you let the glue sit for a few minutes, it'll go nice and tacky so the parts won't slip around when you put them together. White glue is nice and tacky now, so we're moving on to the lenses in the lower bumper. The red one goes on nice and easy. The clear one looks like we forgot how to use tweezers and we drop it. And I can't find it. I spent about 5 minutes looking for this part and I was starting to get really worried. And then I found it, right there in front of me the whole time on the cutting mat. And that's in, and we breathe a sigh of relief. And then we have the hood vent with just the tiniest bit of CA glue on it. Here I'm doing a little test fit on the headlight buckets. When I cut them off the sprue, I didn't realize that they were handed. So I gotta do a little test fit to make sure I've got them in on the right sides. Satisfied I've got them in on the correct sides, gonna use a little dab of Loctite CA glue to hold them in place on the edges. I used white glue for the taillights just in case it came through on the edges, that way it would dry clear. Using a toothpick to put a very small amount of white glue on to put the headlight lenses in. I've got the lenses mounted to toothpicks, which helps keep them from slipping out of my hands. It also helps to prevent any glue fingerprints on the inside of the lenses that can't be cleaned off. So with these last couple steps, we're going to call the body work done for now, and that's part 1 wrapped up. Even with the mistakes along the way, my first video build was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me. I'll leave you with a few close-up shots, and I'll see you in part 2.